Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football and basketball today. You know, it's a lot of fun doing this show straight off. No, it's fun to do. It's talking about Michigan football and basketball. What's more fun than that? But today, it's a lot of fun because out of, to me, nowhere, Michigan is able to land a superstar. And when that happens, that gets everybody fired up and thinking about all the possibilities of what that could bring. Now, on the screen, we have a photo of a superstar in Bryce Underwood, and he's not even the one we're talking about. June, which is rapidly approaching, is the month for recruiting, certainly for visits, and there ought to be a lot more to sink your teeth into once we turn the page on the calendar. And I will give you 5 recruits that I'm monitoring, that I'm looking at, to me, that are most intriguing, not the ones that they're most likely to land, but in the same line of thinking of fun, they're the most fun 5 for me, the fast 5 in recruiting, which we will get to straight ahead. Also, you may have seen the Bill Connelly SP Plus rankings. They were nice for the Maize and Blue, and we'll put those rankings out there for those of you who have seen it and those that have not, and we'll walk through it a little bit, look at the schedule overall for Michigan, and it may help you think about, well, this game is going to be a little bit tougher. Maybe Michigan's got more of a chance than you thought at getting into the college football playoff. Maybe you're someone, I get it, in the offseason, it's like, hell yeah, Michigan's getting to the college football playoff. Never had any doubt. Well, that it's good not to have any doubt. But we start with the big news of the week, and it was a very memorable Tuesday, a Memorial Day, coming out of the Memorial Day weekend, a memorable Tuesday for Dusty May in the month as he lands the top player, one of the top, maybe the top player in the college basketball transfer portal, in Yaxel Lendeborg. And he is able to finally secure the decision by Yaxel, who was at the NBA pre-draft camp, was thinking about those are tough decisions. Where is he going to get the promises? How is he going to play? There's some conflicting reports and everything else. You're kind of holding your breath if you're a Michigan fan, because you're thinking, man, if they were able to get a star, and that's what Yaxel looks like he's going to be, is a star. Boy, it just makes everybody on the team, you get that star, and then everybody, like because there are, 5 guys clearly in your that you put out there for basketball. But it's like, I was going to say, like a starting rotation in baseball, you get a couple guys that are frontline starters, but if you really want to win it all, you need that ace. You need that ace. And then that makes the other frontline starters, it just, takes everybody and slots them in, they're one down. And that's what Michigan was able to do. They were able to get an ace. And I was surprised that Yaxel, I was thinking, I don't know, he came out and he said he was 50-50. And then there was a 90-10. It was all this. And then, oh yeah, he's coming to Michigan for sure. All kinds of different things, being said about him. But, I was thinking that he would likely go to the NBA. So this is just great news for Michigan basketball. Great job by Dusty May and his staff. And it just means so much for the Michigan basketball program in year 2 for Dusty May. And you can be someone who wants to tap the brakes and say, well, this isn't a sure thing that they're going to, win the be cutting down the nets and make the Final Four and all that. Of course, I don't think anybody's thinking that, but um, a big part of being a fan in sports is being excited about the upcoming season, feeling like you have a chance. You could even make a case, although you wouldn't want to make this case, that it's just it's not more important than actually doing it, but having the feeling like you can and having the juice, it is something, and that's what this does. This gives you where you feel like Michigan is in the mix. They're in the mix for everything. And I thought Andy Katz, the Big Ten Network, yesterday, he talked to Yaxel, and his quote was, "He told me," this is Andy Katz, on what he heard from Yaxel Lendeborg. "He told me he wanted to have a chance to win the Big Ten, compete for a Final Four and a national championship, and potentially be the Big Ten Player of the Year." Now, look, all four of those things, if you get one, of course, you'd want the championship. And if you get the championship, automatically you get 2 out of the 4 because you'd be making the Final Four. But you're coming in with a player who you feel like could be a Big Ten Player of the Year, could be the best team in the conference, and then would have a legitimate chance as a top seed in making the Final Four with a chance to win the national championship. And I don't know, would I take it a step further and say, hey, he's got a chance to be, now he didn't say this, or he didn't say this to Andy Katz, that he could be the national player of the year. He's that kind of player on the surface that we are looking at. And that's why it is so exciting, to me. Now, the first time I didn't watch a whole lot because I was thinking, okay, it's great. I thought it was going to be a win for Michigan, even if Yaxel ended up going to the NBA. It was a win for Michigan if, let's just say that he went to the NBA, if the news was like he was going to stay where he was going to stay in the draft, and he felt like he was going to get picked in the first round or whatever. I thought that was going to be a win for Michigan. It showed that Dusty could go out there and get involved with one of the top players. It was in the transfer portal, but it could also mean as a high school player. And heck, would I rather have a 5-star? It's a question that I was thinking of last night. Would I rather have a 5-star? Now, maybe, if you're like Cooper Flagg, where you feel like a once a generational type, that might tip the scales for me. But, there's, whatever, you get the, 5 to 10, how many ever 5-stars. Would you rather have a 5-star freshman coming in, or would you rather have, and there might be more than that now that I think about it, or would you rather have one of the best or the best player in the transfer portal? The player in the transfer portal, the difference between being 18 and 21, now you get the 5-star, the chance that you maybe get another year or whatever else, but it's it showed that Dusty was able to get in there and get a commitment from that kind of player, and then all of the things that surround it, the support, the NIL. We know what kind of school Michigan is, and they've always had that. But the NIL piece was something that you're like, oh, well, Michigan in football, they had demonstrated that and that they were going to step up to the plate. That wasn't a real surprise to most. It's the it's the straw that stirs the drink and everything else. And a lot of times it's like, yeah, basketball is just there to keep us busy until we can get to the spring game or whatever, to get to the next football season. Not that big of a deal. All of those things, even before they got the great news yesterday, were a sign that Michigan was serious about their college, about their team. Not just that, the fans that were serious, showing everyone, hey, they can go out and do this, that they want to be serious and everything else. And they were. And then they get Lendeborg, which is now pretty fabulous. Like I was saying, I watched I wasn't watching a whole lot because I was thinking that he was going to go to the NBA, but I did watch a little, and I like to get, you get a feel like everyone else, just watch him. And I thought what jumped out to me in a comparison was that he reminded me of Jason Tatum from the Celtics, who went to Duke, and that he's built like him, about the same height, and he plays a similar game. He can get out there on the 3-point line and stare you down. Now, he doesn't have quite the knockdown 3-point shot that Tatum didn't have that kind of knockdown 3-point shot when he was even a rookie in the NBA. But all of the things that you see Tatum do with his size, putting it on the floor, using his size to be able to get and get to the lane, that was the first comparison that jumped out. I don't want to call him a poor man's Tatum, but it's a similar type game. I watched a little bit more tape this morning, and there was a guy who went to Arizona who played in the league for, 20 years, won an NBA championship, named Trevor Ariza. Kind of built like Trevor Ariza, and the shot almost reminded me a little bit of Ariza, different kind of looking shot. But those were the two comparisons that I came up with when I looked at Lendeborg. And it's great news. Basketball at Michigan, you can't have an arrow pointing any higher up for Michigan basketball than it is right now. Things are just looking great. And with this addition, that solidifies it. It was looking up anyways, and now it's just looking up. It's just, reaching for the stars and everything else. So just fabulous news. You can't say it enough of just how great this is for Michigan basketball. Mustafa's talking about favorites for the Final Four. The expectations, I know that a month ago, I was looking at some of those projections for a preseason top 25, and who cares about people like, who cares about any kind of rankings or anything else when your team's not in it. But this was done by I was going to say it was a familiar name, because it was Jeff Porzello, I think his name is. Spinning the wheels a little bit. He's somebody that's been around a little while, and he had Michigan in the top 10. That's what I'm getting around at. That, and his thinking was, if they get Lendeborg, this would be a top 10 team. Now, that's obviously not a favorite for the Final Four, but it's not so far off either. You're I don't know, you're knocking on the door if you're a preseason number 9. And that was just one person's opinion. Mustafa is talking about being a favorite. I haven't looked at the odds if, they have Michigan as one of the 4. Now, that always doesn't mean everything either, because, Michigan's a favorite. People might like betting Michigan because they're such a popular school and all of that. But even saying that they could potentially be one of the favorites for the Final Four isn't crazy talk. It's not something that you'd hear say, oh boy, okay, let's hold. No, I don't think there's any let's hold on. I think that's what this does. You get a star player, you do what else Dusty was able to do in the transfer portal. You bring in Trey McKinney as well, and then with the players that Michigan has coming back, and the way you saw Dusty put it all together with a limited time last year as a first-year head coach, and now he was able to have more time to cook, and that part is all exciting, is as exciting as well. Hey, now it looks like he's got more material to work with and just what he will be able to do. So all good things. Now, it's not everything when it comes down to basketball. When you say size, you can't teach it. It's nice to have. And the same thing goes with wingspan. But do yourself a favor and look at Lendeborg. Look at the center that they've got. Let's see, 7'3" from UCLA coming in. And then the other power forward that they got from Illinois. Take a look at the wingspan. Uh, the kid from Illinois is he got a 7'5", 7'6" wingspan? That's what the Greek Freak and Kevin Garnett have. About 7'4", 7'5" wingspan. The 7'3" kid, I don't know what his wingspan is. 7'3", at least. And then I saw that Lendeborg at the pre-draft camp had a 7'4" wingspan. You know, just in college, not college basketball, I can remember in high school, and you're there and you have your coaches and you're playing a zone, and they say this about once every year. Get your hands up. Because just think about it. But now you got 7'4", 7'5", and 7'3" on that front line, and what Dusty can do, that's pretty impressive. As Scott saying, if they cut down on the turnovers, U of M is easily Elite Eight. Yeah, it's a different team. I don't think turnovers, now you can say style of play, and because they want to move the ball around so much, it will be interesting to watch and to see if they're able to cut down on the turnovers. That's going to be something I hadn't really thought about that part, but yeah, that would be one thing that they would want to shoot better, rebound better, and cut down on their turnovers. And you're thinking about projecting that they could potentially get into the Elite Eight. Sure, Final Four, Elite Eight. Sky's the limit, I think, when it comes down to it. Ferris talking about Michigan as a basketball school. Well, when it comes down to Michigan, there's not many schools when you go through each decade and see those teams that were able to get to the Final Four. And I think you could go to the 60s, 70s, certainly the 80s, 90s, and you go through, and Michigan has made the Final Four in all of those. Basketball has been there. If they could get a run, and I don't know how Beeline almost had it that way, where you feel like you want to have some of those tickets in your hand. It's a very exciting thing to do, to get down there. It would be a nice thing to look at, where you would think about that the fans in the surrounding area. Now, everybody likes a winner, so it goes with that. But you think about, and so I don't know, if North Carolina and Duke had the kind of sort of up and down that Michigan had, would there be years where you'd look in there and you'd say, wow, this is really a Tobacco Road? I mean, whatever. Kansas, maybe the same thing. But I've always wanted more from Michigan basketball fans myself. I think sometimes, football is such a big driving force, and everybody loves, football is such king of everything, that it just takes up every, it takes every fan and just, grabs them. But you can be more than just a Michigan football fan. It's okay, for you to like football, and then basketball. Like, you can like baseball and hockey too. I don't know how thin you can spread yourself. I think a lot of people just talk about all the different sports they like because, and they used to fascinate, because I feel like I watch as much as anyone, and I like football, basketball, hockey, and baseball the most. But then you'll have people like, well, I love racing, and I love WWE, and I love golf, and I love tennis. And what about, they'll come up with some more things like, well, what are you doing every day? I mean, how much are you really watching? How can you watch? I like the NBA. I like college basketball. So maybe you wake up and you just watch sports all day long, all the time. No more. Then you're a movie expert too, watching all the movies, every series, these ones that take 70, 80 hours, and then all the sports and everything else. So it's wild. Scott just says Michigan is a sports school. Michigan is, no doubt, when you look at their Olympic sports and how they've done over the years, they take a lot of great pride in that. And then, wherever you want to look, we've just been through basketball, but then, hockey. They're definitely a hockey school. Baseball's, baseball, because they play it 3/4 of the season, the weather's 50 degrees. It's tough. It's a tough sell when you have to go against Arizona State and the Southern schools when it comes to baseball. Although softball has been able to traverse it better, and they deal with the same thing. But a lot of that, where you go. I am getting ready to talk some recruiting, and Urabi is talking about 4 stars in the state of Michigan, and he is talking about Sadler, so he's interested in Sadler. And Scott is talking about basketball. He says, look for Oscar Goodman to be a surprise breakout player. I'll buy that. I have not watched Oscar Goodman play, but I liked how he was able to come over. Where's he from? New Zealand. He came over, enrolled in school, and was able to practice with the team last year to get acclimated. That sounds like that really give you a chance. When football players come in for spring, he was able to come in for what? An entire semester. Talk about coming in early. So, it almost feels like he won't be a freshman. And he did. He is going to be. What's up? Good to see old 615 coming in. Let's get to some recruiting. And a note on this, I said it at the top, but this is, to me, with recruiting, I'm very interested in recruiting. It's a lot of fun for me to be able to talk. I am not a recruiting expert, so there will be folks out there that will jump all over me. You don't know anything. Okay, well, that's all right. But these 5 players that I'm mentioning, these are not the 5 that I expect to come off the board. These are the 5 that I'm sitting here right now on May the 28th that I am most intrigued in. It's not that this is I've been beating the bushes to find out who's coming in this weekend or who's going to be at the quarterback camp or who's setting up their official. That's not. There's people that do that. They work really hard at it. They do a great job. This, again, for me, is the players that I am most interested in. And even without saying it, I was going to ask you folks that tune into this show who the players that you're most intrigued with. And here's Kindtick, who's interested in Zayden Krempin. Says, I think we need him. Great kid. That's the kind of guy, that's the kind of information I'd like from you. Who you are most intrigued in. He was one of the players that I had on my radar to put in the top 5. But without further ado, let me go ahead and get to my Fast 5 in recruiting. And for number 1 on that list, it's going to be Mr. Hyder. Savion Hyder, who definitely Michigan wants him. I did not see he might have, because now that I'm thinking about it, I was going to say no, he doesn't have that commitment date, but I did see that as I was reading today, and I would say who I thought said it or reported it, if that's the right way to say it, that Tennessee's going to get his last official visit. I was looking at a lot, some people think it's a Michigan, Ohio State. Some people think it's a Michigan, Tennessee. I think it's a Michigan, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia fight. And so Michigan coming up is going to get their official visit on June 6th. Now, look, Michigan liked Osborne and Hyder, and there was a thought that they could get both of these guys. They wanted them. That's something that they were, I don't know if they were dreaming about it. That was their plan. Recruiting plans change pretty quick. But they wanted Osborne and they wanted Hyder. Meanwhile, Osborne is off to Notre Dame, and Hyder is the apple of Ohio State's, Tennessee's, maybe Georgia, and certainly Michigan's eyes. So Michigan really wants him. And it's the most intriguing. If there's one player, and if you could sit there, if we could fast forward to the end of June and you could say, who's just the one guy? Go ahead and pick the one guy that you would want to see Michigan get. Hyder would be the one. Michigan, they want a top back. He's the top back on their board. One of the top backs in the country, all of that sort of thing. Hyder's the one. Michigan wants him. Of course, they would be, in a knockdown, drag-out fight with Ohio State. Winning that would be like going 5-0 against Ohio State, in which they are poised to do this year when they host the Buckeyes. But being able to beat Ohio State head-to-head, that's something that is really nice. And Michigan has everything going for it. We know about the school, we know about the tradition, we know about the money that they can offer, and we know what kind of system that they run. So all of those things are in place for Michigan to be able to go out there and get this commitment for Hyder. He's at the top of the board for me. He is right there. Now, you got a picture with Alford. I was looking through. I was just on Twitter, and I put Savion Hyder's name in, and there he is, standing next to Tony Alford. But then he's right there, the same thing. Guys standing with the Ohio State running backs coach. There's Tennessee standing there right in him. He's thanking the Tennessee staff. And I think it's going the same thing with Georgia. I mean, this is somebody that everybody wants, and he is on the top of the list for me. That's number one. Let's go to number two. Somebody mentioned him earlier, C.J. Sadler Jr., top-ranked player in Michigan. He is just on the outside, knocking on the door of being a five-star ranked wide receiver in terms of where Rivals has him at. And Michigan has been in on Sadler, as you might expect, for the longest time. Now, he does not have, at this broadcast time, anything set up for a visit to Michigan, but Michigan is thought to be his leader. He is also interested in potentially going to see Belichick at Carolina and Coach Prime out there in Boulder. But ultimately, right behind Hyder is Sadler. And Sadler, for a lot of reasons, and we can name them very quickly. You always want to get the top player in the state. And getting a local player in Detroit, state of Michigan, is always something Michigan wants to do. And here they are with Sadler. That would be number one. Number two is that they want to get some top flight, big time playmaking receivers. We go over this. I'm sure everyone does that talks about Michigan football. Now that they have Bryce Underwood over the next couple years, the level and the talent of their wide receiving core is going to be upgraded. And the idea is you're going to want to play with a first round generational talent, who everyone thinks Bryce Underwood is. And what follows is that Michigan is going to throw the ball a lot more, although I don't think they're going to do that much, certainly in the first 6 games this year. But moving forward, we're talking about guys that are going to be playing next year when Underwood be a sophomore. You want these kind of players. I did read a story today about Sadler, and this is not a surprise at all. And I think everybody would say, oh, well, that makes sense. It was like when Charles Woodson, the first 4 or 5 years after Michigan had Woodson, every corner that they got was like, oh, this is next Charles Woodson. Now, the story that I read, the writer was saying Sadler he was saying, this guy's opinion, he may be the next Travis Hunter. So maybe Sadler, he didn't have a quote from Sadler saying, yeah, I want to play both ways. And yeah, I like Hunter, but it makes sense. The guy just won the Heisman. And captivated college football. And so if I'm a wide receiver and I'm a dynamic defensive player as well, do I think Sharon Moore would say, yeah, if you could do it? Remember, Hunter was the number one player overall coming out. And then, ultimately he was able to, he's played both ways. But if someone expresses that interest, I think Michigan would be like, yeah. So the guys want to be the next Travis Hunter. All right. Around here we say, you mean the original Charles Woodson? He wants to be the original Charles Woodson. But hey, if you're a class of 2026, do you remember, you have to hear, Michigan back in the day, before there was a college football playoff. And in fact, the last year of the antiquated system where Michigan was locked into the Rose Bowl, where then they relied on the writers to vote who was number one. And the coaches, they relied on the coaches to vote who was number one. And one of their own, Tom Osborne, was set on retiring, and they gave him a going away gift. The coaches did. No team had ever jumped, the way that Nebraska did. But there you go. That's it. Sadler. He's number 2 on the list. Number 3, for me, for Michigan, I'm most intrigued in is the young man out of Hawaii, Honolulu. Got some friends that are over in Hawaii right now. They were talking about going to luau's and, so, you ask them, you're out to dinner, what else are you going to say about going to Hawaii? Sounds great. It does. And there we got a picture for Michigan out in Hawaii. Grant Newsome, Sharon Moore. Sharon Moore is kind of a big guy, and Grant Newsome is too. Malachi Lee looks like he's listed at 6'7", 310. He looks like he's 7 feet, 350. Now maybe Sharon's dipping his shoulder a little bit or whatever else, but let's go. Now they making a trip out of a recruiting visit out to Hawaii. Now that's got to be a tough job. These guys are in the air traveling all the time, so I don't make it sound like they're just sitting around with their feet up all the time. But I didn't get a call back. I called the Michigan football office and said, "Look, if you guys really need someone to head out to Hawaii on your Malachi Lee visit, I'm here for you. I could carve out the time, and I could head out there with you." And I never got a call back. 6'7", 310. This the kid looks like he's going to be a tackle of the future for Michigan. He's number 3 on my list. Michigan targeting him. I have a quote from Malachi Lee. He said, with Michigan coming out to when Michigan came out to visit him, quote, "They made me feel like I'm a priority." That's a good sign. Like to hear that. Now, for Lee, he's got a top 6 I saw. Michigan, USC, BYU, Utah, Alabama, and Georgia. Right there for Mr. Lee. Side note, for the longest time, I don't do it anymore. I used Malachi as my password, along with a few other numbers and symbols in there. But Malachi was the base part of my password. Who's ever going to come up and think of that one? Pretty good one. It was off a character in a book. Malachi. But there you go. If you're ever looking to switch it up, just head out there and use Malachi. And there's his high school, which, why don't you use that as your password? Kamehameha School. I'll just say, let's go down to the K right there. Malachi Lee, number 3 on the list. Recapping: Hyder, Sadler, Lee. Most intriguing of the Fast Five that I'm here. Let's go to number 4. And I have to admit that I'm going with NASCAR McCoy. I love his name. Now, he's very highly rated. He's a safety out of Buford, Georgia. 6'2", 175. There's nothing not to like about NASCAR McCoy. But the thing about NASCAR McCoy, I saw that he did take an unofficial visit to Michigan recently, where U of M, they're definitely, they definitely have a, I was going to say a horse. They have a car on the final lap, and they're jockeying for position with NASCAR McCoy. But the other cars that are out there, Miami, Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama, would you feel better if NASCAR McCoy liked a team that was a little bit, closer to the Mason-Dixon line? All of them are like right around the way when you're looking at, Talladega there at Alabama, and Auburn, of course. He's from Georgia. And then the U, which has just got into the picture. But, Michigan could go down and pull NASCAR McCoy. I feel like I made an error not getting like some cars zipping by when talking about NASCAR McCoy. I'll make that adjustment. Let's do it. NASCAR McCoy. And admittedly, he ends up on my intrigue Fast Five recruiting list because of his name. And you get tired if your name's NASCAR McCoy. To everybody that you ever meet saying, how'd you get that nickname? You got to ask, how'd you get that nickname? My dad thought I was going to be fast. Not a bad way to do it. My dad likes cars. My parents like cars. We live, my dad went to the Talladega race. And that's when my mom told him she was pregnant. And that's when they said, let's name him. Well, that sounded nicer than Talladega McCoy. NASCAR McCoy. Pretty awesome. Get some of those cane sugar Coca-Colas. That'd be a better nickname. Woo! Now you're talking. Rip. Here is number 5, and this is also on the intrigue list. I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but I mean, it is out there. It's not like I am just making this up. There is a 5-star wide receiver who is top 5 in the country. He is the number 1 ranked wide receiver by Rivals in the entire country. And his name is Tristan Keys, and he is out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. 6'2", 185. He made a commitment to LSU. However, Michigan is trying to flip him. And we know that Michigan just flipped a 5-star last year from LSU. And I could see the conversation with Bryce Underwood. Bryce, we're going after, here's the list of who we think are the top wide receivers. And Keys is going to be on. If Keys isn't number 1, he's in their top 5. And I think CJ Sadler is the same thing. And they're like, Bryce, we're going with pockets full of money, whatever they're saying to him. We're sparing no expense to get you these wide receivers. Keys is one. Sadler's the other. And we're going to do everything we can to be able to pull these guys. And he makes the Fast 5 because Michigan, that I'm normally not into the I have as much fun screwing over the other team or the other team losing as, Michigan winning. I know that's a huge thing for everybody, but I think it would be a little bit fun to steal away and flip one of the top players in the country again, for Brian Kelly and LSU. And there was one time that I liked Brian Kelly, but when BK went down there and said, "Howdy, everybody, I'm real happy to be down here," was what the worst impersonation that I'd ever heard. Golly gee, I'm happy to be down there. Oh, Brian Kelly, the look on his face. What did he say last year? We need to really get our NIL going. What would he say this time around if Michigan lost or was able to flip and get keys? Now, Michigan is in trying to flip a bunch of different guys. I put them up on the board. Samu Mula, Camden Portis, Shadarius Tootle. Tootle, for the longest time, looked like he was going to be with Michigan. Toodaloo. Shavar Young, Jeremiah Gray. They want all these guys flip targets for the upcoming class. Now, that's it. Tootle looked like he was all Michigan's, but then, they're putting a lot of heat on him down there, down south, to keep him around. Now, knowing the interest that the people have in recruiting, is that I asked for some of the names, and you guys gave them to me. Zayden Krempen. Get him on a list and start looking a little bit. That's it. Hyder. He's on my list. Lassiter is great as well. Juju says he's can't miss. I think he's a running back that Michigan is on, right? Mustafa is saying Hyder is good, but you got to think a weapon on the outside like Sadler would also be good. Yeah, look, I got him 1-2 in my interest list right now in my Fast Five. So, yep, I'm there for both. Mustafa pointing out that Marshall is going to be there for the next couple of years. Yeah, well, for the next 2 for sure, right? That's it. Smash the numbers, saying because of our recent success at both football and basketball, the Spartans have come out of the woodwork. They need 2 sports spanning 2 universities to formulate their anti-Michigan arguments. Yeah, I'll leave that one for you, but I'm sure the immediate reaction of Spartan basketball fans were like, over the last couple of years, if you bow out of the tournament relatively early, some of them were turning on Tom Izzo, but then last year it felt like they were just ready to. That they wanted so much for Tom to get into the Final Four again. They lose to the same school as Michigan, and then the way things are going, Tom would get up there and preach about how he doesn't like the transfer portal and everything else. Let's see. Travis Johnson. Kinetick 615, I'm going to say he's a big recruiting fan. He's talking about the defensive tackle down in Texas. Yes, I was reading about him myself. This kid could come in and be the next Mikey Sainristil, still playing both sides of the ball. Mikey Sainristil still could have played both sides of the ball. Pretty good wide receiver for Michigan, but then turns over as a defensive back, and there's never been a better position switch in college football history than Mike Sainristil. Still, he would be on a list. Credentials, put him out there, whatever he did. He was serviceable wide receiver, flips over, and is a star immediately on the defensive side of the ball as a junior and then as a senior. I mean, he is a superstar on the defensive side of the ball. It's not a surprise that he played well for the Commanders. this past year. That's it. Now, Scott is going back to 1997, saying that Michigan would have destroyed Nebraska. I think Michigan would have beat Nebraska. I'm with you on that. There's a lot of things that point to Michigan beating Nebraska. The one I like the most is that you look through, and I like them on green. I know, Scott Frost ended up being kind of prickly and all that kind of stuff, and politicking for a piece of the title and everything else. When you measure up how the players went on and played in the pros, everybody on the Michigan defense almost ended up getting drafted or played in the pros. And you look at Nebraska, kind of light when it came down to that. Not a whole lot of that. I would have said Michigan myself, but that's it. All right. Scott talking some hoops, going through a starting five. Point guard, shooting guard. I don't know. I didn't see anywhere on here McKinney. So, Trey McKinney, 6-man. Keegan Carter Meadows. That's Scar's guy. I'm put him on this list. I screenshotted. I had Carter Meadows in there. That's Scar's guy. He's been on him. He wants to see him, but I like that name as well. Maybe I'll put him on maybe I'll do a fast 10 next week. Yeah, Toodle, Finney. People like him. That's it. Ferris wants to see more wide receivers to go with Bryce Underwood. I think everyone wants to see that. Amari Latimer. And so he said Lassiter. Is that the running back? I think Michigan is on him. I think they do like him. That's it. And we're almost down here to LTM. Here's Ripstar saying that he saw Denny at a Grateful Dead show in '79. I did not go to my first concert until the mid '80s, so you did not see that. But speaking of that, it reminds me, Rip, of a concert that I went to. It was AC/DC and Metallica and others. I like one of those Monsters of Rock type deals. And you could bring anything that you wanted to drink as long as it was in plastic containers. And so our group filled up beers in these like milk jugs that I've noticed over the last few years. I don't know if they still do it in college. I haven't really noticed, but they called them Borgs. We just called them, gallons of milk that we poured our beer in. But they called them Borgs. Well, I made up a Borg, my own. I got a Lendeborg that I have on the screen, and there it is. Now, I haven't filled it up with anything yet. I'm going to wait and just keep that one in here. But here's my Yaxel Lendeborg. You go for that. Part of the fun of making the Borg is naming it. And you see a lot of the, clever ones. I have seen them online. They're like, hey, this is my so-and-so Borg. This is it. I got to think that the popular Borgs at Michigan is going to be the Lendeborg. Now, maybe so much so, I don't know if this would be the exact one. There'd probably be some better ones to come up with, but this is a good starting point, jumping off point of a Borg. Maybe we can sell these outside of the Chrysler Center. Now, nothing inside, or maybe you can get something going inside. Forget the lemonade stand. Let's go. Let's get some Lendeborgs going. Well, these bad boys up the halftime by halfway, and by halftime, you'll be all set. Maybe they could do it at the Chrysler Center inside. I don't know what the limit is. I know they sell beers. I went to the Maryland game this year. I saw a bunch of people pounding down silver bullets in the stands. Why not come up and sell some Borgs? Now, I don't know exactly what it all entails over there, if it has to be the milk carton or the milk jug or not. But maybe you could have maybe a miniature Borg, Lendeborg. I feel like that would be the way to go. All right, well, I was going to say that's it. Put your comments in. That's it. Borg. Oh, is that a frat thing? I didn't know that. But it still works. All right, get your thoughts in. We'll end up the show with any kind of questions, concerns, or thoughts. Ask me anything kind of thing. Throw those in there right now. We'll get to that right after these two things. One is that you want to know about recruiting. June, all these official visits, what's going to happen. You do have the COA meeting that's coming out here in a week's time with Michigan to find out with the penalties or anything. You got the latest going on over there at the Maize and Blue Review. And it's worth it just for that, to see what the latest is what's going on with Michigan and what be coming down around the corner. But all of the recruiting, football, basketball, the feature stories, all day, all night to talk about Michigan. And I got to say that there is a Tigers are playing right now. There's a thread with, I'll say, at least a half dozen Tiger experts, and then another dozen or so of just like Tiger fans that get on there. And everybody's watching every pitch, every inning, and they're just, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but there's nothing like a pennant chase. Every day, every minute, seems like people are commenting in on the Tigers. It's just one of those other things that you wouldn't have thought about, but it's there. Join the Maize and Blue Review today by going to michigan.rivals.com. Bill Connelly does his SP Plus, where he puts a formula together that he explains, which has recruiting and everything with how the team is put together. And then he puts together his own ranking system as it comes from Michigan. And the strength of schedule for Michigan going in, 38, a pretty light strength of schedule. When you think about it, it's where a lot of people, and then you look and see the teams that Michigan is missing this year. That's a big reason you can say, I think that Michigan's going to win double-digit games this year. If you were picking Michigan to win a double-digit games, you could say that's going to be one of the big reasons, that they have a very manageable schedule where they could win that many games. And then you look at Bill Connelly, who went through and put together his post-spring SP Plus rankings. Now, look, Ohio State's always near the top, and there they are again at number 1. Michigan does not play Penn State. Michigan does not play Oregon this year on the schedule. But then look at Michigan slides in at number 10 on the SP Plus rankings. There's their strength of schedule I talked about at number 38. Only Notre Dame has what is looked at as a lighter schedule heading in. Maybe that's why Notre Dame will have people predicting that they'll be in the college football playoff again. You could understand it with that kind of schedule, at least the SOS rank as we take a look at it. But not too shabby when it comes down to Michigan. And look at their defense. An SP Plus ranking of number 3. Only behind Texas and Ohio State, there's Michigan. And you would think at 32, with the offense, only way to go there is to go up if they could do it. So I think that is encouraging when, you look at it and you think about Michigan and making the college football playoff this year, just by the numbers, just by Bill Connelly and SP Plus ranking. of 10. I say encouraging. The other teams, when you look at Michigan's, already mentioned Ohio State being number one, but OU, these top three would be the three games after Ohio State would be the three games to me that would be the most likely Michigan would lose, and they end up being, not a coincidence, the top three highest ranked teams on Connelly's SP Plus rankings. Oklahoma at 16, USC at 30, Nebraska at 34. And then you go down the list, Whiskey and Washington, 37 and 39, Michigan State, 64, Maryland way down there at 70. The opener, New Mexico wasn't, I didn't know there was 136 teams. New Mexico's like 133 on that list. I feel like I could get some time in the game against New Mexico. All that being said, it's an encouraging poll, the way that I looked at it. Finishing it up with your questions. Ferris, the 23 Michigan championship team would beat the 24 OSU championship team because the 24 5-loss Michigan team beat OSU with 62 yards of passing and 2 turnovers. You know what? I don't think that you could I don't think there's much of an argument with that when it comes down to it. All right, let's see. Ferris. First concert. The tens of thousands of watching this want to know. The first concert that I ever went to was a Canadian band called Triumph. Thunder 7 tour. And for the longest time, they were just a trio, like another Canadian band, Rush, who I also liked and saw a number of times, but Triumph was the first one. Triumph sort of fizzled out. They broke up, and they never quite reached the status of Rush. But Triumph was one. My second concert ever was Springsteen. Born in the USA at the Silverdome. That was number 2. Number 3, I don't know if I can remember number 3. Might have been Ted Nugent. What I would tell you, for all the days of concerts and everything else, it was not like it is nowadays, folks. The Springsteen, a mile away from my house was a Farmer Jack's, and right next to it was this Ticketmaster. And at like 6 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock, my brother, who's 3 years older, and his friends, we drove up there to see if there was going to be anybody in line, and the line was already halfway around the building. So they dropped me off, and they were like, "We'll go get some stuff and come back. Stay here." And I ended up standing in an alley at 14 or 15 years old. This is never happening anymore. Waiting for till 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, staying up all night, waiting in the alley, in a Farmer Jack alley, waiting for the Springsteen tickets. But it was a blast, all the people around. It's like a party. Showermans in Livonia, waiting out for Ted Nugent, and U2, the band U2 at the Silverdome. When I was in high school, the Joshua Tree, we went out there, drove out there, said, we're going to be the first in line. Who cares if nobody shows up for hours, that we'll be first in line. We'll get front row. We got out there like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. We went up there, and there were only a couple people in front of us, and we went up and they gave us a wristband, number 9 on the wristband. What we could have done is gone home and then drove back up there at 9 o'clock in the morning and had the wristband and got the tickets. That is not what we did. We stayed there from 2 o'clock all the way But the party that ensued with the thousands of people that lined up behind us, and what happens is everyone wants to walk up to the front, and you get you get a single digit bracelet. You're coming up there, and you might as well have had a crown on your head. Oh, number 9. Like, yeah, I had the bracelet. So it was a great time. So there's your concert experience. That's what's going on. What's worth $2 million on eBay? By Lendeborg? Maybe. So far, blue cheese, a couple cane sugar Cokes, Ferris, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Satriani, and Living Color all played in the 89-92 in Ann Arbor. Bet Dennis went to all of those. I was not around from 90 to 92, so I didn't see any of those. Although I would have loved to have seen Pearl Jam. I do know that Nirvana, somebody had mentioned frat boys. I was friends with some members of a fraternity at Eastern. And one summer they said, we work security at the State Theater. And if we're ever late, would you want to go down and be involved in security? And, look, I know I'm like, I'm not much of a security guard. It didn't matter. I didn't care about that. I only had to put on a shirt and stand there. So I went to my first concert actually working with them. And it was Iggy Pop at the State Theater. And I was about halfway up. I just had a little flashlight and we're supposed to let anybody go past. I let a couple girls go past, to tell you the truth. But so there it was, Iggy Pop. The next week, I had something going on and they wanted me to work the show again. And it was Nirvana. And I had something going on and I didn't. And then they never gave me a call after that. I had the feeling if I'd have went to Nirvana, I might have been there and I might have been the security guard all summer long. But I was a cancel or a no-show, or I wasn't a no-show. I just didn't accept it. But always looking back and saying, I could have been there for Nirvana. Just didn't happen. So no, I didn't go to any of these, and I have never seen any of those. Although Pearl Jam would be on the list to do it. Now, Mar is talking about that he had a death in the family, and I'm sorry, Mar. That is all of our thoughts from everyone here on the board goes out to you. I say the board, the feedback board here, and everybody from the Maize and Blue Review as well. Can't imagine. Let's see. Alex Orgy. Scott talking some Tom Izzo. Alex Orgy. Yeah, look, I mean, it didn't work out with Alex Orgy. That's the one. Look at Rip. Rip knows. Little magic power. That's right. There was no drugs or anything. I remember the first time that I went to see, you go to a concert and you're like, whoa, that smell of pot is really, so it's almost like you feel like, well, this goes part and parcel with a concert. And then I remember years later, I went to a Pink Floyd, one of my favorite bands. And I became a fan of Pink Floyd before there were any drugs or anything involved. But, you'd go to that Pink Floyd Thanks so much for watching. That is going to do it. I'm frozen. Take care, everybody.